Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to work this chair.
It's just like it's an inch. She is going to put down and
I didn't ask this for
Okay, we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. Thank everyone for coming and being here tonight. And next we'll have our introductions.
Valerie Halverson, Town Clerk.
And Diane Laughlin.
Mike Adams.
Tim Sessoms.
Elizabeth McLeod.
Alicia Flowers.
Scott Whitaker.
Katrina Witt, Finance Officer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker, for being here. I know you're under the weather, not feeling good. Appreciate you coming. We do need a motion to excuse Ms. Barnes to be, I think she's going to come, but she's going to be late. She had a graduation to go to. Would anyone like to entertain making that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Laughlin, second by Mr. Adams. All in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Okay, approval of the agenda.
I handed it out to everyone. I need this page. This was my stuff.
That's the secret.
She gave me these two.
Okay.
How are you?
Testing. It's not working. Testing. Testing.
Yeah, it's coming out of the
Okay.
All right. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Mr. McClellan. Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Adams. All in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous.
I wonder what happened. Maybe my
Okay.
battery's dead.
Manager presentation of
Maybe
final
just
draft
like
of
the
the
screen that says
fiscal year 14-15 budget.
Okay, this is a very different plan than I had tonight. We've got a 30-some page budget document that's about an hour away from having time to be printed. So, and then the plan was to put it on screen. That doesn't appear to be working, so what you have is nothing but spreadsheets, and we still have the information I have in front of me. We'll go through it and answer any questions that you have. Just to start off with a couple of things that were very different about this year's progress based on feedback from the folks last year was the creation of a line item draft very early in the process. So basically, the majority of the budget has been done since March the 31st. And what you have tonight is this is the full proposal that we're going to be discussing tonight. And we can approach this however you would prefer. What Katrina and I have done internally is we've gone through and just charted every change since that draft, so it'll be real clear to anybody what we've changed. And we can go through those one by one, or we can set kind of a minimum threshold if you wanted to say $1,000 or $2,000. Above that, just focus on those. It's up to you how we do it. We have all the information. It's just a matter of how much detail you want tonight.
Excuse me, pardon me, Mr. Manager. Mr. Mayor, if this is a public meeting, public hearing on the budget itself, the public doesn't have that budget.
It's not a public hearing. This is a presentation, and I apologize that you don't have it tonight, but we do have enough copies
Do they have
of
those?
this from tonight,
No,
right?
you don't. They don't have them.
They don't have this. It's,
I have one
How
extra.
many copies?
Which we're kind
are
of
we short?
passing around here, which isn't working very well.
How many
I
copies?
can go make copies.
If we just had enough for folks that are here, I think that would address that concern.
I apologize for interrupting.
Thank you.
And so, to begin, what we want to look at is, the first thing I want to mention, because I think it never gets any airplay publicly with us. I just want to quickly read the vision statement for the town. I think it's a good start. And it's, Summerfield is a town that respects the history of the community and balances growth with the preservation and utilization of our natural, cultural, fiscal, and citizen resources to enhance our quality of life and our small town identity. And I think that's in keeping with the comprehensive plan. And specifically, as we get into the budget, I would first like to ask how you would like to go about it in terms of how much detail you want on the changes. I'll start off by just telling you the largest change from the draft that everyone has seen since March the 31st is the addition of a project, a paving project at the athletic park that we're going to talk about under capital projects this evening. You can give me any feedback you want on how much detail you want tonight.
so that's 110,000 for the capital outlay. Is that the line we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So just what is that? Because we talked about a couple different projects at SAP, so I just want to make sure I understand what that exactly
Well,
covers.
All right, we'll get to that then. I'll just move into that shortly. So the first part of the full document that you'll be getting is a recap of where we are, how we've done this year on the budget priorities. And I thought that was very important because some of these are continuing projects. For instance, the A&Y Greenway. And so I don't know how much you want to revisit that this evening. I'll be glad to talk about any of those budget priorities. We have it very clearly outlaid in the document. And then we can move into the specifics of what's new for this budget. You tell me how you'd like to proceed on that, and I'll be glad to give you as much detail as you want. And I guess the best way to approach that is, first of all, do you have any questions about progress or plans or anything you're unclear about with the current year budget priorities and how that plays into the coming year? We'll be talking about it. If you have any specific questions, we'll get that out of the way and move forward.
I have a whole list of questions about this budget.
Okay? All right.
And, so I'm ready if I ask?
Sure.
Starting with the revenue, the revenue page, I went to the finance committee, the last finance committee meeting, and there were some good questions asked, and I had questions. I didn't want to put my 2 cents in. I was there to listen and learn. But we haven't done a very good job with investing our money, and we're getting, less than 0.25% interest on what we have invested. There was a lot of discussion at the finance meeting, but there really wasn't any recommendation, which I felt should come. We have 2 members out there right now, so please feel free to stop me if I'm mistaken. But they talked about government treasuries, which were paying, 2.75. I think now they're around 2.5. I know 10 years is a long time. One of the questions I wanted to ask was, is there a penalty for early withdrawal? And if so, what is it? Because we could be getting 2.5% on a couple of $1 million, and now we're getting less than 0.25%. So I just have a real concern that that money is just sitting there and it's not being utilized, and we're not being good stewards of the taxpayers' money. So,
I think the finance committee had asked that we come back to
the next meeting with CDs anywhere from 1 year to 5 years, I believe, and rates. And so we were planning to have that for the next meeting. $2.5 million that we have invested currently at only 0.3%. With the Cedars program will mature the end of June, and so of course we're looking to make some changes there, but you're exactly right, we need to move forward.
Okay. Yeah, and as long as you're investigating that, did you find out about a 10-year government treasury? It's been a long time since I bought a government treasury bond. Usually they discount them up front, 'cause that's how it used to be in the olden days. But I'd like to know, I know 10 years sounds like a long time, but it goes fast, and, we can't depend on the fact that people think interest rates are going up, but we don't know that, no one has a crystal ball. So just find out, what the penalty would be if you took it out early, or even if you left $2 million in there for 10 years at 2.5%, that's still a lot more than we're getting now.
Let me do something, since you've got very specific questions about
Yes.
the budget. Let me get through just some of the first part of this,
Okay,
and
you
then
go
we'll get
right
to
ahead.
that, and we can take it
That's fine.
line by line, if that's okay. Just quickly, the budget priorities that have been identified throughout this process in the last few months and weeks are specific continued improvements on the Gordon property, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Continued development on the A&Y Greenway and progress there, and also the entrance into the athletic park that we've been talking about for some time. And the other thing that came out of a lot of discussion about improvements related to the Sink Corridor, the widening project, there was a lot of talk about what that meant, and what ultimately came out of that discussion was that we wanted to focus on identifying specific areas for signage. I think we need a motion to
Someone like to make a motion?
recognize Councilmember Barnes.
I make a motion to recognize that Councilman Barnes has came to the meeting.
Motion by Ms. Laughlin,
Second.
second by Mr. Adams. All in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous.
And speaking back with what we have decided to do in relation to sign improvements, the gist was that we have time basically before the project's completed. Next year, not this coming budget year, but the next is when we'll really focus on specific costs related to that. And this year was going to be more of a priority to identify the specific sites across town that we would want to look at potential signage and the concept and what that would look like. I say that because the real money won't be budgeted until the following year, but we do list that as a priority because I think we need to keep it before us as a project for this year. And then we have one other project that I'm going to wait to talk about when we get down into the detailed budget. That's somewhat in addition to what's been talked about in the budget meetings up to this point. And is there any questions about any of those priorities yet? Because we can talk about, where we are with them and what the specific plans for this coming budget year are, if you would like to.
Well, the signage isn't in this.
It's not in this budget, but we identified it as a project that we need to be working on this year. And so I only bring it up because of that. I don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. So getting to the real meat, this is what's really the executive summary of the detailed budget. What we're looking at, what's being proposed this evening is a budget of $1,494,657. And to give you real high-level details on that, that amount is $674,732 lower than last year's budget that was very project heavy, very capital investment heavy. And last year's budget, just to put that into perspective, was basically 2.17 million rounded, as opposed to 1.49 million rounded that's being proposed this evening. The other important component of that that I think will be an important bit of information is what's being proposed is the same tax rate that was proposed March 31st, which is a reduction of 3.5 cents per $100 of evaluation, a reduction of 3/4 cent down to 2.75 to 3/4 cents per $100 of evaluation. Specifically, just to give you an idea of what our evaluation is projected to be is for this year, it's 1,339,374,000, and I'm sorry, 1,334,000 and change. So that's up a little bit from this past year. Nothing significant has changed with the evaluation. We are using a 98% collection rate, and that's based on our historical averages, which are a little bit higher than that, actually closer to 99% in the last couple of years, but we're being conservative with our estimation on revenues, and we're using a flat 98% as we did last year. And what we're looking at with the fund balance specifically is we're projecting at the end of this fiscal year for it to be approximately $8 million. And last year we were looking at about $7.5 million at the time. And what this budget proposes to be appropriated from the fund balance to balance the budget this year is, if you're looking on your handouts, this is the page number on there. If you look at the end of the revenue column on your spreadsheet, you see that green number above the yellow number, that $443,407 is what we would transfer from the fund balance in order to balance. And so there again, that's the high level proposal. The detailed budget goes into some of the similar things that you saw last year, outlining the comprehensive plan. Another key part in looking at departmental budgets is within this $1,494,657 total budget is we have basically within every department, I'll just go through and read you the totals. For governing body, it's $51,568. Administration, $290,150. Finance is $80,739. Legal remains at $65,000. Planning is at $144,900. Election services at $0 because we don't have an election this year. Property and buildings, it's way down to $78,000. Community resources, $700,450. Community services, $81,200. Community planning, $2650. And those are the department totals that equate to that $1.49 million. And I guess the more important part of that is just looking at that in terms of, well, how does that compare with last year? And you'll also have this in the detailed budget, and I'll just tell you the variances on that in just a second. want to break that down by department. Again, just trying to give you higher level numbers, and I'm going to round these just for ease of talking about them. Governing body is projected to go up roughly $7,900, and let's talk about that one specifically. That is largely due to what I feel is needed for town council is a stipend increase when looking at how Summerfield compares to other municipalities across the state with similar populations. I realize this might be something that you've given thought and may have different opinions about. I feel like you deserve a basic stipend that's in keeping with what other municipalities pay. The averages are roughly less than half. In other words, council members and the mayor, all of you paid roughly half of what other municipalities receive. And this increase still does not bring you in line with the proposed increase with other towns, but it is an increase nevertheless. And what's being proposed is specifically an increase of about 60% for the mayor to $400 a month. That would bring up the mayor's annual stipend to $4,800. Just putting that into perspective, the average for towns our size is almost $7,300. And in terms of individual council members, we don't distinguish differently with the mayor pro tem, but with governing board members, the proposed increase is 50% more, and that would be from going from $200 a month currently to $300 a month. So that would put your annual to $3,600 a year. Just even if we were to pass, even if you were to adopt this, it'd still be quite a ways from the average, which is a little over $5,000 that other municipalities pay. And I bring this up tonight because I would like to get your feedback if you want to give it to me tonight. You don't have to make a decision until at least the June 10th meeting. But if you're going to be in favor of that, and you think you're in favor of that increase, I'd like to leave that in there. If you're not, and there's consensus that most of you aren't, we could take that out prior to the public hearing. And that's one of the items that I would like your input on tonight, or some discussion about.
Would you like for us to do that now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I've already told you how I felt. So I'm not in favor. Because I think we're different from other towns. We really are, a unique town. We, elevate that we're, led by the citizens. And so I feel like I'm, as a citizen doing this, almost as voluntary work, because I wanted to do it. So I just didn't. I don't feel like it's necessary.
Did anyone ask for a raise?
No one asked for a raise, and this was very much a manager-led initiative. And I did that just after requesting the League of Municipalities' most recent salary survey across the state. And I think as the manager, I'm in a unique position to, that is part of my job, and I see something that I think we should be doing differently. It is my job to propose that, and that's exactly what I've done, and I did that knowing it might not go over favorably. And speaking of that, I want to be clear that there was a lot of concern about that from the Finance Committee. We talked about this in the Finance Committee, and the majority of the Finance Committee did not like the idea of the stipend increase. And my message to them, or their message to me rather, was make sure you communicate that to council. And I'm doing that tonight, and I wanted to let you know how they felt.
I'd just like to read this. I cut it out of the newspaper. New Hampshire's constitution stipulates that senators are paid, this is a state senator, are paid just $100 a year. Some view the position, which is Jean Forrester, who is a New Hampshire state senator and earns $100 a year. Some view the position which Forrester has held since 2010 akin to community service. And that's what I consider this position to be, is community service. And I don't think we need a raise.
Okay, is anyone who would like to speak in favor of an increase or consideration of an increase?
I think that, that to be on par with other towns and looking towards the future for other people that might want to serve the community, I don't think it's a bad idea to have parity with other towns, at least even if it's not even in parity, but even upwards. But it's not a case of needing money. It's not a case of, other than the fact that we're just putting ourselves as a level of, as a town government in comparative to other cities. But if asked for a vote, I would vote against it.
Okay.
Well, I just want to make a comment, and I probably have served on the council longer than anyone here since I started in 1997. Served for quite a few years at no money at all, and one of our council members brought up the request for a stipend, and we put one in. I appreciate you checking to find out where we were. That's good information. I don't really see any need for it at this point, but thank you for checking.
Okay. Ms. Laughlin, anything from you?
I'm not doing this for money either, because Lord knows if I was, I would want more than $300 a month for some of the things that have to, be considered and everything. So it would lower the budget somewhat, and that I'm for keeping us
Okay.
keeping us low. So
Very good.
Well, I do think that the mayor does a lot of things, I think if you want to consider something from the mayor. And I'll leave that up to him.
Yeah, from my perspective, it is service, and so I don't think that, I appreciate you reporting, let us know where we are, but that's not, it's like Ms. Lawson said, it's not why we do what we do, so I think we have a consensus that save that $7,900.
That's sufficient, and that'll be an adjustment that you'll see by the public hearing
Okay.
in the document. That way we won't
thank you
have
for
to,
your consideration.
that way we won't have to talk about that June 10th.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah. Moving right along, one thing that you'll also see in the detailed budget document is a lot of details about our budget control, our policy guidelines, budget assumptions, and justifications. One thing that I don't think we have talked about since I've been here, it's been within the town policies for several years now, for about the past 6 years. But it's just worth mentioning while we're talking about budgets. Sometimes in some of your training, and I know this will be good for newer council members, that in your training you've heard of minimum fund balance requirements, and what gets thrown around in a lot of municipal circles is a minimum of 8% that you hear sometimes at training. And one thing I just wanted to be clear about, within our policies back in 2008, Summerfield decided that we would never go below 30%. And again, that just hasn't been stated. I don't think in a long time, so I just wanted to remind you all of that. We're nowhere close to 30%. So it's not really an issue at the moment for us.
Where are we at?
So if you go back to the audits, we're in the hundreds of
I was gonna
percent.
say we're in the
and
hundreds right now.
Yes, and I don't remember the exact number, but it's really high.
It's unprecedented. We're kind of an unprecedented town.
Okay, just to hit revenues, and we'll get there on the detailed budget and answer questions, but I'll hit some of the kind of high-level revenues for us to begin with. The property tax at a proposed reduction of 3/4 cent per 100. That puts would put our property tax collection at $361,000, sales tax at $94,000, intergovernmental transfers at $519,500, investment earnings approximately $25,000, and fees and miscellaneous $51,750, fund balance appropriation that we've already discussed, $443,407, and you add those revenues, and that is the first component. That's the revenue component of the budget at $1.49 million. You'll see that charted in your final document and graphs where you'll have a good visual to put that into perspective. Let's jump to our planned capital projects. If you break those down, I've specifically looked
Give
at.
us a page or something.
Yes, you're going to have about 30 pages for this, and it's done, but like I said, we just ran out of time printing it this evening. But what you're looking at is let's take them one by one with the Gordon property improvements. We're going to be largely done with that as planned in terms of the closing is set this Friday. So that's $399,000 of the budget. The budgeted $600,000 in this current year. And what we're doing is we've spent other funds on the assessments, getting us to this point. What we're doing, what we're focusing on after the closing, we basically have a month left of the budget year. And so the plan is to focus, and the council knows this is mainly for the public. The plan is to focus on really that northeast corner where the hardware building and the dilapidated flag building reside. We're going to focus on that corner with the rest of this budget year, so basically the month of June, because we want to take down the flag building because we feel like that's unsafe. And then what you're going to be hearing about that's budgeted for the Gordon property in the proposed budget all has to do with the acreage, the 15 acres, if you will, on the northeast corner. And that for that we have budgeted $50,000 for the coming year, and that is specifically for salvaging the remaining abandoned mobile homes, salvaging there's 2 small houses on the property that we've intended all along to salvage. There's some barn repair that needs to be done. It's basically in pretty good shape, but to have it secure and locked up all the way around, it's going to need some repair. And basically we've budgeted $50,000 to take care of that into the coming year. That is the first planned capital project. The second one is the Greenway, specifically the Greenway South project, trail development. I think we've talked about that enough for everybody to know the status, but basically we're moving cautiously ahead to get more lined up in terms of the easements and agreements, and also to work toward getting the design price and the design vendor identified. And the hope is that we can make substantial progress into that project the coming year. And we've, not knowing the true number, we budgeted $250,000. That is the number that we budgeted this past year. There's been some indication it may be higher than that, maybe considerably higher than that. We frankly don't have anything firm to go on and won't until we do the RFQ process. And so that is the $250,000 that's budgeted for trail development. The other capital project has to do with athletic park improvements, and we have a combined total of $253,000 that you'll see on your spreadsheets for that. And that is all-encompassing number, that $253,000, that really takes in the entrance and the roadway, and also batting cages that this council had decided we would do in the past, and has not come to fruition yet. We have a plan to complete one of those at the park this year. And if you're wanting to know specific, no,
Because we did authorize that.
Yeah, we
I remember
voted for that
distinctly
a long
vote.
time ago.
you did, but it was never built.
Okay.
And so we're, that's why it's in this year's budget. We had, part of it was identifying the right place out there. We really didn't want to do that until the house repairs were done, because it's close to that area. And we didn't know how much we were going to have to do related to drainage. And where we're going to put it is on concrete that's right there in that general area. We're trying to use existing concrete so we don't have to pour a new pad. It's kind of hard to explain without having a picture, but it's an extension of the plaza, basically.
It's a safety issue though, right?
The batting cages aren't really a safety issue, the netting was really the safety issue, and that was handled in mid, or really late summer, early fall 2012. So that's been long done. The batting cages has been more of a want, a need, because now they get at a certain spot and hit against the fence. And
I know what you're saying, batting cages.
Right, we're just doing one. It's been requested actually that we go ahead, requested specifically by the SRA as the biggest user, that we go ahead and do two. And what we've said is we've got a plan for one. We want to build it, see how it's used, see how it works with our plan, and how we're trying to make it work into the existing flow. So one, we estimate that would be about $5,500 to build that. Maybe a little less with what we're thinking, our latest thought process on it. But the other large component of the athletic park improvements involves paving the gravel parking lot. And specifically what we're talking about is, for those of you that were at Founders Day, the main parking lot in front of the field house that's paved, if you're familiar with it, right past that, there's a gravel road down to the maintenance building. There's additional parking down there, and a service road that goes into the plaza area. And this budget proposes to, to pave basically all of that gravel lot and the access road, and put up fencing, and it, in essence, doubles the parking in that area. The area is already being used. It's already being used beyond the gravel lots that are marked off and stalls that are there. And the need is certainly there. And we feel like possibly if we can coordinate it with the paving of the entrance into the road, we might could have some savings there too, while all the equipment's there. It does several things for us to have that paved in terms of keeping the parking lot cleaner. It keeps gravels off of the fields that are getting out on the fields now with the gravel drive. Just a lot of tangibles it's easier for parents with strollers that park there, coming up the hill, those kinds of things. And it's a good time to do it if this council wants to do it. It's a later priority that's been added.
Is that 112,500 grounds improvement?
It is, and within that, we had requested a paving company to come out last week, and they were really busy, and we basically don't have a quote yet, but what we're allowing for all of that paving is roughly $100,000, and part of the other breakdown of the 112.5 is we anticipate it's going to take a lot of fencing. The fencing gets us security around the maintenance building. It also helps with the problem we have with unwanted access into the plaza area between the fields. And we've got $10,000 in for fencing. We had already planned to build a gate that was in the draft, the March 31st draft. We just moved that line item, rolled it up into other improvements, and it's all there as a total.
So the 100,000 does not include the second entrance road?
No, it does. It
Oh, it
doesn't
does.
include the fencing. Like, we put all that pavement in, and we're going to be bringing even more people into that area. And we want to segregate that parking lot with the maintenance building. We're getting, sometimes we have problems with people coming into the park, going behind the maintenance building and not when they shouldn't be back there. And we also have problems with folks getting into the plaza area when they shouldn't be. And so that's for fencing, and then about 25.
Fencing and the road around,
Yeah,
just in the park though, not the
so the
second entrance.
paving, the 100,000 for the paving includes all the paving, the
The
road.
second entrance and the road around behind the building?
No, not the entrance, and
No,
no.
that was my question.
Yeah, that's the 136.
Okay, that's the entrance development, okay.
And so that's the number. If you roll all that into one, it's 253,000. And that brings the total capital projects to 553,000. So we're over $500,000. And that compares, last year we had 1.2 million in capital projects. So you can see that's a significant part of the reduction in this year's budget over last year's budget. I do want to be clear, since you're looking at spreadsheets, that the 553,000.
It's 503.
503, it says on here.
P&R capital outlay is 503.
So where's the other 50,000?
The other 50,000 is the Gordon property improvements. I'm not talking, the 553 is not just the SAP
SAP.
improvements. I'm sorry about it.
Okay.
It's including the 50,000 for the northern portion
Okay, got it.
of the Gordon property. But what I was going to say is, now that's not all, when I'm talking about capital projects, I'm not talking about all capital expenses. We have other capital expenses, but we're specifically pulling out what's a real project. So basically, anything over $1,000 that has a useful life of even 1 year is considered a capital expense. So there are things that we would buy, for instance, that are over $1,000 as a capital expense that are not capital projects. So when you're looking at the spreadsheet, I just wanted you to be clear about that.
And how much of that 1.2 million that was in last year's budget actually got spent?
Calculating that. She's working on that.
Okay.
That
I
answer.
didn't understand the question.
The question was how much of the 1.2 million that was budgeted for capital projects this past year has been spent, and that's what Katrina's working on. I'll say that if you're looking at the numbers through May 27th, what you're looking at there, May 22nd. If you're looking at that, what you won't see is the purchase of the Gordon property later this week. A major item that was different was we had budgeted $250,000 this past year for town hall repairs. It's under 30, it's roughly about 27 so far on that. And so that was a major difference there. We came in a lot under budget. We budgeted $50,000 last year on the field house repairs. Those ultimately cost close to 20 to 25. She's getting specific numbers on that. But to answer your question in a very general way, a lot of that is unspent as of right now.
Okay, that's a good enough.
Scott?
About 475,000.
Okay, so less than half.
For the Gordon property, okay.
So, just going back to the 553 number,
Yes.
on project. So it's 503 under the P&R capital outlay. And then it's 50,000, that 50,000 is captured in the, is that, line item, 5010400, page 507, which would be under proposed with 50,000 there? Or is that what I'm seeing, is that what it is?
Some of the property and buildings.
Okay, so that's the 50,000 from that line item added to the 503 again. Okay, got it.
Right, so
Okay.
the 553 is 50,000 Gordon property,
Gotcha.
250 for the trail, and a combined 253 for all of the SAP improvements, which is the entrance, the paving project, the batting cage,
That's what I thought it was, I just
all
wanted
of
to make
those
sure.
items. So all of that together is
Yeah.
553.
Okay, perfect.
And that's what compares to, in capital
Compares.
project terms, the
Relative to
1.2
this year.
billion from last year,
Right.
from the current budget.
Yep.
Any questions so far before we get to the detailed budget?
I have a question. The road, the entrance to the ballpark, is that 90,000 included in that 253,000? That you just said about the improvements on the entrance at the athletic park?
Yes, ma'am. That,
Okay.
that is part of the, that project. We just rolled that into as one capital project in terms of staff improvements. So it is.
Wait a minute, so it's $343,000 for the new entrance to the ball field?
No, we're budgeted 135 for that.
I'm sorry, so it's 90,000 plus the entrance to the ball fields and the road that you're gonna build.
135
135.
Total 135.
for the second entrance.
Is that gonna be a road or is it a short?
It's a road.
It's a road. Yes.
Yes, to help the people that use.
In terms of moving ahead, are there any more questions so far? Moving ahead with the general fund expenditures, we've already gone over each department and the variance, the comparison with last year. And I can answer any questions about that, or we'll wait until we get into the detailed part. And those are the highlights until we get to what you have in front of you. So we can go ahead and jump into that. So do you have your questions in order of,
I sure do.
Okay,
I
great.
have them right
All
here,
right.
page numbers and everything. And some of them, I'm not expecting detailed answers on a lot of these things. They're just questions in general that I have in my mind, and I'd like a brief explanation. But we have $17,000 in expected revenue from planning fees, and yet the planning expenses is $144,000. So my question is, do we need to raise our planning fees? Are we charging enough for them?
well, that raising the planning fees incrementally is in the proposed fee schedule, but not anywhere near enough to offset that.
Is it
The large-
reflected in this budget? The raise, the
Yes.
incremental raise is reflected in the budget, and it's still only $17,000?
The largest part of providing planning internally is we have a professional planner, we have planning services. You can see the breakdown of planning, and it's an expense, it's a major expense of the town. It's one of the few things that,
I know
in
it's
addition
the
to parks
only
and recreation,
thing they're
that we offer.
We're required
terms
to
of
have
record.
planning, not parks and rec. Okay, so, and do we charge an environmental impact fee? And if we don't, should we?
That's a question I'll have to get back.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. On the Summerfield Athletic Club, now on page 2, so that's Julie. Explain this proposed revenue of $850 for concessions. What is that? Do they sell drinks, hot dogs? I don't know, I don't know.
We've had, since before I came as manager, we've had a contract with a vendor to provide concessions while we're renting the fields, specifically at the baseball fields. And that's vendor is Kim's Dogs. We're under contract with them, and we get a percentage of their monthly sales as part of our contract. And it's, for the most part, it's a service to the product users. It's 15%.
Now, the rental fees, the proposed 28,000 revenue in the new budget, does that include, is that based on the SRA paying the same fee as everybody else and actually paying for the lights that they use?
That is based on the proposal that we'll talk more about in detail at the public hearing, but basically, sure I've got it. Just a second. Close to. Copy. Yeah. Let me find my copy.
Okay, I'm just gonna throw another question in.
Okay.
How come we don't make any advertising revenue over there?
It's been an attempt that's kind of languished. When I came as manager, we had just a few banners up on at the athletic field, on the ball fields, maybe 3 at the time. It was something that our former events coordinator was working on, and I frankly think we were charging fees that were way too high. But the biggest, and we just didn't have many takers, and we didn't have somebody really working sales to make that happen. The biggest thing is I'd really like to not see it out there, period, because it really makes our fields unattractive without a lot of control over it. And I've seen that done in a lot of ball fields, and rarely have I seen it done well. And it's a lot of effort to have that tight control. And what I mean by that is, one color banners, all the same size, all done exactly the same to where it's uniform and attractive. And then you have to have it filled in to where you don't have a lot of gaps. And we've got 3 large fence areas with 3 large fields out there, and it's frankly just not worth the effort and for the return. And the finance committee talked about it, I think 2 meetings ago, and I have to look back if it was, I think it was the actual motion that the finance committee made a recommendation that in considering the proposal, they felt strongly that we shouldn't pursue the banner program specifically.
I was just gonna say, because of the lack of past results, that was the main reason.
Yeah, the
Not
pricing-
the aesthetics, but the lack of past results.
Pretty much, that's how I was looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Me too.
the pricing of the banners was Go.
I see banners, Carolyn Alley and over here, and,
Summerfield Recreation
Yeah.
sells them and gets them down there.
yeah.
The prices are like a quarter of what our prices were probably.
Probably.
Okay, well, that's something to explore, and I will keep that on my radar.
While it's on your radar, assess what you think when you look at those situations that have those banners. Come back and show me somewhere where it looks nice and you think it will look appropriate in our athletic park.
It doesn't look nice, it's advertised.
Yeah, I can see what people would want to change because colors are part of our existence, so they would want to have the same colors. You know what I'm saying?
Well, what you have is you don't have tight control over it. You have different color banners, different sizes, different materials.
Well, sizing, I could see you would want to make that the same as everybody. You had this huge one that was small, they're paying the same amount, but.
And you have it in the places that it looks good, it's sold to go all the way across the fence. It's not gaps, it's not spotty, and it's a lot of internal work, keeping up with who owes what for the banner this year, because it's a yearly thing, and actually, while we're talking about it, the SRA proposed to do that for us. I frankly just don't think much of the idea because I know what that can look like, and I don't think that a agency that's ringing, or a group that's ringing our park should be the ones to control something that I think is important the way our fields look. We get a lot of compliments on our field, and I think that's our fields, and I think that's for a reason.
I'd like to add to that as well. I was involved with baseball fields in another location that did that, and as tight a controls as we could possibly do. Advertising is advertising, it still got out of control. And it took a lot of time from various people to monitor and then renew contracts on a regular basis. They just simply got out of control. And it was ultimately just decided after about 5 years to abandon the whole idea.
Was it profitable?
No, because of the amount of time
It's
that
not
it took.
profitable.
The time that it took somebody within the organization
organization.
to just keep a contract up that was legal, and then quarterly renewals or monthly renewals, it was killed you on time.
And do you jerk them down when they're a month behind? They have
No,
to pay?
because we didn't have the personnel to be able to go jerk them down, so they got free advertising, which was ludicrous.
The few that we have, way more staff time was spent, it was way more money in paying the staff to deal with it, even for the couple that we had. And it
So
was
it's not,
awful.
the answer to my question is it's not profitable.
No.
And that's good enough for me. Okay. Talking about profit. Why don't we make any money on food vendor revenues and all those other food vendor rides and games? Founder's Day rides and games, we're proposing that we'll make $50. I don't get that.
Yeah, I'll kick that to our
I'm
town
sorry,
clerk.
I didn't hear you.
The line item for Founder's Day rides and games, we're gonna make, the town will make $50.
For the rides, the contractor that we get, we don't pay him any money. He works for what he can make versus several years ago, when we had Brinkley Entertainment, we paid them somewhere around $18,000 and we had to sell tickets, and we never made anything off of it. We're actually saving money by having Ron Cook come and working for what he can make without putting our money in it at all.
So, do you have any idea how much he actually makes?
He said his income was way down this year is what he thought, but he didn't tell me a figure.
Okay, I'd be interested to know how much he makes. But anyway, okay, I'm not gonna belabor that point, it's just a quick question. I don't wanna take all day, because I have about 10 pages here.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth wants to dump Page 2, Historical Committee donations. What happened to the clock fund money?
That's still in a designated fund. It cannot be used for any purpose other than that. If you'll remember back to some of our conversations about the Gordon property and potential clock tower in that area when that's developed.
Now, that's a question, clock fund.
The clock fund, we have a designated clock fund that has, what,
$1,324.
$1,324.
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you familiar with the block fund?
Yeah, I've heard about it.
it
I just
goes
didn't hear
back
what
to
you said.
the early 2000s. And nothing has been collected for a long time. It was the idea that
We
bigger
used to
programs
give
like-
people, bonuses and they would donate it to the clock fund rather than take the bonus. So, we finally just said, let's just stop the clock.
So the good news is, because we put it in a designated fund, we can't do anything else with it. But the good news is, we have a plan for that. We think we can incorporate that into upcoming facilities plans.
Okay, on page 3, where it's due subscriptions and service fees, it went from $14,000 to nothing.
That's just, he just decided to give the details.
So
of
the
that.
line items underneath
Below.
it, okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure.
That was a response to last year's request to break
Okay.
that out very specifically.
Okay. Yeah, I think it would have made more sense to me, and a little slow on the uptake. If you had the list and then underneath the total of what it was, instead of that due subscriptions and service fees, the top figure.
Well, that part, while that has to work its way out over the course of the next few years, because it's already the way it's in there. So that will work its way around.
And I would like, under administration, we have 3 employees under administration, is that correct? But
Two full-time and part-time.
everything is all lumped together. There's salary and wages, unemployment, everything else is for all 3. And I would like 3 separate columns with, the line items can be the same, but 3 separate columns broken out so that each person, you show each person's salary and wages, social security and everything else, instead of lumping it all together. That's what I would like.
What purpose would that serve? you
It would
believe?
make it clear to me. Instead of having the manager, the clerk, and the assistant manager's salary and all the other compensations lumped together in one figure.
I could see that like as a separate Excel sheet. I don't think we want to include that in the
Well,
financials.
anyway, I can get it as
It would be provided
For the council, the reason they can't do that, is because certain personnel things can't be disclosed, I think. Right?
It's right there.
Well, no, I mean, it
Oh,
is.
it can?
It is it's public record.
I thought there was some.
It makes it quite a challenge internally to separate it all out when you have associated workers' comp, health insurance, life insurance. When you have those identified, it would, as Katrina said, it would be easier just to give you a spreadsheet of just that
Okay.
and show you that rather than redo this and include that.
Yeah, that would be fine if you would include that. And also the same in Parks and Rec, because you have 1.5 people there, and that would be good. As far as planning is concerned, I know that you have that $144,000 planning figure. Does that include the services that we get from Guilford County, or is that just internal planning expenses?
That's internal.
That's internal?
That includes zoning enforcement, and the Anderson, the town engineer contract.
Right.
It also does have an unemployment compensation, which is a question mark. There's a previous employee that way back 2.5 to 3 years ago, I guess, that's still questionable whether they have the claim.
Okay, so this is the 144.9.
Yeah, but does it include anything that Guilford County charges, any services that the county charges us for, or no? And what does the county charge us for?
County doesn't charge you.
No,
There's no charge from
no.
the
Now,
county?
some of the bigger items there, like we have the town engineer contract for $15,200. That's Anderson Associates, Warren Simmons, that's in there. Another item, similar amount, $15,400, is the code enforcement. And that's a specific one I want to point out because even if that's not on your question list, because that is quite an increase. If you remember, we've been contracting with them for code enforcement for the last couple of years. And the increase is actually 25.2% of what they're proposing for the same services. And that is the basically 2 days a month, or 20 hours a month for John Gaines.
So that's their increase,
That is their increase, so that went from 11,000 to 15,400. So that's a 25.2% increase. It also includes mileage, but basically that's just their increase. And I talked to Rick Flo, the principal at Infocus, about it, and he said it's basically health insurance for them. So it's hard to believe that it's going up that much, but they would be in the private sector. And you know, I'm not going to question what their health insurance might be increasing, but he said that kind of increase was due to their health insurance cost. So that's just a direct increase to us if we stay with them.
That was my question, is there anyone
Well,
else that can do that job?
There are other firms that do that, and we've been with one in the past, before I came as manager. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was this evening. I had thought about shopping that around between now and the actual hearing on the 10th, and we didn't know if the amount was going to be quite that high until recently. But what are your thoughts on it?
I'm not, at this point, based on last meeting and some of the increases that we saw there, I'm not a real fan of Infocus at this moment anyway. But I'm not surprised about the health insurance going up like that, because I have a son-in-law that's in business and his has gone up almost 35% for every employee. So I'm not surprised about that. But I would like to see you, if you could shop around before we have our meeting, give us some options, and break that down in cost basis, and of course the number of hours they would be giving us for some kind of fee.
Well, what I would like to do is use the same parameters pretty much as their existing contract, which is 20 hours a month is what it breaks down to. And I would, in order to have a direct comparison, and because I had requested additional code enforcement last year, and council's feeling at the time was that we didn't want to increase the amount of code enforcement that we do. And because I had proposed an extra day per month to 3 days. And so I'd like to just keep it the same and see what we could find since we have a known dollar amount and set up. But there aren't that many companies that really specialize in that and are set up to where they can travel from across the state or office to do that.
They recommend individuals who do that. They're not companies. Individuals who do that.
My other question is, we have $6,000 for website redesign and $5,000 for branding. Do we really need that?
Well, that's down in terms of the website design with a somewhat slower project year scheduled. I feel like we could make progress on that this year, get that done. If you'll remember, we changed our website quite a bit, kind of out of necessity with our old template that was basically taken away from us because it was so old. And but that wasn't the redesign. Our site still needs a lot of help. In terms of the branding, I'll give you an example, because this has come up before, of some of the things that we use that for already. The banners that we just had up at the Founder's Day, the athletic park, those banners, that was charged, I don't know if it's reflected in this yet, that was charged for branding. And we also have more of that coming up for the community park, as right now we have no kind of branding going on, no kind of park ID once you get past your sign.
Okay.
I mean, you looked into the website redesign, is that a fairly accurate figure?
It's accurate. I think we could do it for less than what we did by using more of a templated approach, as long as it's flexible and has a robust content management system so that staff can make changes as needed.
In the legal service fees, the $65,000, does that include the fee for the work on development ordinance, or will that be done in this budget year?
That will be done this budget year.
What's the
So the 65,000, just a quick recap. 2 years ago, before we had 70,000 budgeted for that amount. I cut it 5,000 last year, and it looks like we're going to come in within that this year. And I'm proposing to maintain that at 65, but that's actually down from what's been budgeted in the past, and that's just a part of our effort of trying to tighten things that may have been more robustly budgeted than they should have been.
Yeah, it's $9,000 less in the 2012-2013 budget, at the actual that we spent, and we budgeted 65 so far through March. We've only spent $38,000.
But to answer your question, that development ordinance work was a total of $2,500. That has, by the end of the budget year, it's already been billed. That will all be paid within the $25,000 development ordinance line item, separate from this, because that's not actually billed from the attorney's office. That was billed privately as a separate.
Are there any other outstanding invoices yet to be billed into the legal services?
We've paid through April, so we'll have May and June.
May and June. And that'll take you up to 41.7 or close to the 65?
The 41.7, we've had very low invoices, sometimes as low as $1,000, sometimes we have as high as $6,000. So I guess it just depends.
Do you think so we can drop again, maybe down to 60,000?
Possibly. I mean, things have settled down quite a bit. We had a month a year or so ago that was close to 10,000 for 1 month, and those months are scary, but things are trending well right now. But that's one item that we just want to be covered in.
Right.
Even if you had two $6,000 months, you still are well underneath the 65. So.
Now, how do you do that with the budget? Sorry, Alicia. Like if you have 2 years where you're, it was 56, that's almost 9,000 below. And if we're about that this year, I mean, after 2 years, I mean, is that safe then to reduce the budget?
Well, we certainly can cut it. We can cut it now for this coming year. If we're comfortable with that cushion that we have for legal services, because that's somewhat of a wild card depending on, as you know, litigation, and it's trending in a positive direction.
Do we have a pool that would be like a legal services pool, that if we are under budget, maybe we put half of that towards a legal pool? Should there be some kind of litigation issue to come up? So over the course of years, maybe we keep capping $15,000, say, that it's just a pool of money that was budgeted but not quite reached full budget.
Well,
does that make sense?
We can't do that, but we have a separate, just to be while we're talking about this, we have separate legal coverage through the league We just used them recently with Matter in the recent past. And that was one of those situations where our town attorney stepped back and thought he should not be a part of that situation. And so that was handled by the league and was done very affordably. I think, well, I don't remember exactly the amount, but
Then I would be in favor of taking it to 60,000 right now.
I would be
Putting it there.
Me too.
okay.
Any discussion on that? We have a consensus.
Yeah, is there any way, I mean, if we had some exorbitant amount, I mean, we would just do an adjustment,
We'll
correct?
do a budget amendment.
Certainly we have the money, so we're not going to have to borrow.
Everyone okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Taking notes on
And town meeting refreshments. This is a very selfish question. You budgeted $600 and spent $117,000, so where are the donuts for the town council?
I'm drinking.
Wait, which one is that, which line item are you at?
This is March, it was that, now it was that.
What line item?
$30.
So we're gonna have more for the public hearing next time, because there'll be more people willing to leave.
Tell me.
When we try refreshments, we often take a lot home, or they end up being, well, no, we eat it at the office. We eat it at the office.
Ms. Flowers, where are you looking at as far as?
I am looking at the page 4.
We have a
So,
different.
yeah, it's a different number.
You
It's
do a
Um,
line
yeah,
You do a line
I-
item? You do a line item?
We're getting 301-0208.
It was $800 and we spent $117, and now it's $600.
And we're actually up to $130.90 as of
I
May
just
22nd.
happened to notice that the Trails Committee meetings gets much better refreshments than the town council meetings do.
Now, I will tell you, I haven't done my petty cash, and there's a lot of receipts in there for meeting refreshments and coffee. So,
$500 worth?
no, but you maybe get 100. Okay.
So we're up to $250.
Okay. And, okay, the Summerfield outlet, now I'm on page 8, line item 601-1414. The Summerfield Athletic Park gates, what is that? Do you have to fix the gates or is it new gates?
No, that's the one that's been rolled into the project
Into
of
the
other
entrance.
improvements.
Right.
That was basically before we thought about paving the full lot. We'd already been planning for gates to control unwanted entry into the plaza area. And so that was there separately, and we decided to roll that into one line item because it will probably be done in conjunction with the fencing that will be done in conjunction with paving.
Okay.
So,
Didn't we need to fix the gates at the other entrance, or was there a problem with locks, something like that on the other gates? Or did I just dream that?
only problem is having enough staff in the evenings and
Oh,
weekends to
lock
close
it.
to lock it.
Okay. And on the Summerfield Community Park, why is it costing us $40,000 to maintain that park? It's from, we've spent $17,000 so far, and your proposed in the budget is $40,000. What is that? What is that $40,000 for the community park?
And where are we at?
Oh, same page, I'm sorry, line 601.
It's just
1250.
Is it 5 or 6, Alicia?
Okay, wait.
This is on section.
Oh, I'm on a different,
It's
Wait,
page
but-
5, it's page 5 on this document,
Okay,
What's the line item?
about 3/4 of the way down.
6011250,
thank you.
40,250 for the community park operating expenses.
Okay,
What
well,
does
that's-
that include?
now
Well-
it's changed to 39,000.
Right, it's 39,250 now, but the bulk of that
Yeah.
is mowing and landscaping. That's the major expense. You've also got contracts for lights with Duke Energy, It's the alarms, it's plumbing, it's well septic testing. And we've got a footbridge to be replaced. It's minor, I mean, this is $1,500. Pier repairs, gravel for trails. But the big items are power and mowing and landscaping.
Are we gonna be close to that 43,000, do you think, by the end of the year?
Yeah, the thing that's missing from the expenses that will likely be done within this budget year that's not reflected there is that we're planning to get a contractor to come in to do the mulching and landscaping aside from the mowing because it's separate. Have them come in and do that before July 1st. So that'll be a significant expense there, much like we just spent a little over $4,400 doing that lake park, getting ready for Founder's Day.
So you had said in the past that you were trying to eliminate all these multiple contracts that we had. What's your progress on that?
We've eliminated in janitorial. We've eliminated the one with mowing all athletic fields. RFP that's in progress right now is to combine the mowing and with the landscaping. So the mulching and pruning has been separate from the actual mowing, not to be confused with mowing of the fields that needs to be separate. So some progress, but that's the one big item. That's the one thing left to consolidate, because at that point we'll be handling all the janitorial parts internally now. We'll be handling all of the mowing of the fields, the athletic fields internally. Jeff does that. That was the purpose of the used reel mower we bought this past year. And then we'll have a single contractor who's responsible for all of the mowing and all of the pruning and mulching, anything that falls in mowing and landscaping for town hall property, SCP, SAP, and then the new board requirements for the board property. So we'll have a single vendor who is responsible for all of that, instead of having it broken up the way we've had it in the past.
That's
So
very good.
that's
It's
what
got to
we're
be more cost effective too.
But that contract has not been awarded yet.
The RFP has not been awarded yet. And, but yes, and not just, it's not just about being more affordable, it's also about accountability, because the problem we've had in the past is that the landscaper versus the mower, they said, no, that's their responsibility. Well, that's his responsibility, and we've had this back and forth, and it takes it out of the equation.
Scott, just another question on the landscaping aspect. This is line item 501-0203, $4,000 additional versus last year's budget or this year that we're working. What do you see that as being required?
Yeah, because of the Gordon property, what's going to be required, because, we don't pay that much for just mowing the town hall lot, but we are going to have to, when we take down the flag building and the blacksmith shop, and likely a big tree on the corner that's dead, we're going to have to mow that lot. But then another huge part of that is, even if we just do a minimal area that we mow with the acreage of the Gordon property, we've got to mow around the house and the barn and a reasonable area along 220 just to maintain it so that it'll look attractive.
Okay. Thank you.
And I know the only other thing I have to say is probably more of a statement than a question. The operating expenses on the athletic park is $108,950. The operating expenses on the community park is $40,000. If you back out the revenue, which is minimal, $28,800 on the athletic park and $700 on the community park, it still costs the town almost $120,000 a year to maintain those two parks, and that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. what I can say to that is, we have two large parks. We have a multi-million-dollar athletic park and a large investment here, and it takes it to keep them up and keep them nice for citizens. The challenge that we have internally is exactly what we're doing now. We're continuing to try to fine-tune and consolidate contracts and make that as reasonable as possible. And we've done that to some degree, but the big component is what the RFP is about.
Okay. And I just want to go on record because I've heard you say before, I've heard you mention phase 3 at the athletic fields, was I mistaken?
I think you were mistaken about that. What I've mentioned, and I'll be real clear about that. There's a master plan for that park that was built, the athletic park that was built in 2010, completed in fall of 2010. And while we didn't go exactly by the phase 1 and the phase 2 of the master plan, it generally followed that direction. And so what's left is what's left in phase 2. I don't know what phase 3 is about. That must be.
That's good.
But I'm not sure about that. But what's left is there's area behind the maintenance building of the athletic park. There's actually land in there, enough room for 2 more fields, the 2 multi-purpose fields similar to Field 1. And that is what was left of phase 2, along with a large parking lot that extends beyond what I'm talking about paving this coming year. I sent y'all the diagram by email just showing you very exactly what we're talking about paving. So if you remember, just past that, where that paving cut off, is designed a large parking lot. That's similar in size to the parking lot in front of the field house where all the rides were at this Founder's Day. There's another lot very similar to that plan and 2 fields. So that is phase 2. As I know it, I might be missing something minor, but that's the bulk of phase 2. There hasn't been any town initiative or discussion since I've been here as manager to pursue phase 2 yet. With that said, what I'm proposing with this paving up to that point would mesh very well. That's where I've talked about phase 2 recently. I've said that this plan, if we do it, it connects and fits well if we ever do that. So we wouldn't have to redo a bunch of paving and design in order to do phase 2. So that's what I've said recently about it. My thought as manager, since I've been here, is that we need to make sure that we're operating our existing athletic park very well before we go there. That's ultimately a council decision, and we're trending in that direction. And but I'll say we built the park in 2010 without a very good plan of how to run it and what it would take to run it. And that's part of the growing pains. That's not a criticism. It's just part of the growing pains of where we are 3.5 years out from that construction. And we're still in that phase of fine tuning it to where we really have a great control over it.
I just want to say that I am a proponent of limited government, and if you increase the size of those fields, you're going to be increasing the Parks and Recreation Department.
Yep.
And
Well, you don't increase the size of the field, you either build new ones or you
right,
don't.
if you
So-
build new ones, you'll need more people to maintain them because you.
Absolutely.
So I'm just not in favor of doing anything like that. I forgot the Knox boxes, and we had people here from the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee was not in favor of those Knox boxes, and you were there and I was there. And so there's $3,700 there for the Knox box programs, and they were pretty adamant about it.
They were there to hear the presentation by the fire department.
No, the Finance Committee meeting.
They brought, the fire department presented it at the finance committee meeting.
No.
No, they're just looking at our budget. All right.
Yeah, let me back up on that one. That request for $3,700 for the Knox box additions came by way of the fire department, or came through the fire department by way of the Public Safety Committee. I was at the Public Safety Committee when it was brought up. It was a request made by fire department representation. The Public Safety Committee supported that with budget request. It was their only distinct budget request this year. And they asked if I would include it in the budget, and I thought it was worthwhile to propose, knowing you may have different opinions about it. It was brought up at the recent Finance Committee meeting, so the Finance Committee talked about it in a fair amount of detail. Questions were asked about it. Depending on how you feel about this in general, if you're not in favor of it, and there's consensus of that, we can take it out. If you'd like to hear more about it, excuse me, we could invite the fire department or a representative from the Public Safety Committee to come and speak about it.
I would just like to mention, from the meeting we had, it was given to us as an idea from the fire department and on public safety. So we thought it was interesting for community service. We didn't know, and we listened to it and we said, well, that sounds like it might be a thought we could push, bring forward to council, the finance committee, so on and so forth. So that's why you see this on here, because they asked, they talked about it, we talked about it, and we said, well, let's express our thoughts, and that's what Scott said, it's up to all of you. And that's why that's on there, because it was something that they mentioned, and we thought, well, is it a good idea or bad? And that's kind of
But the finance committee said that they didn't support it.
Excuse me?
The finance committee said they did not support
We
it.
didn't really vote on it. We didn't,
No, you didn't vote on it,
but there was
Strong
but
consensus.
discussion was pretty adamant about not doing.
I was just trying to explain why you see this on here, because it was brought up, the way it was brought up, fire department. public
Yeah,
safety.
I remember the first time they brought it up, and I heard it. I don't really want to hear it again, but if anybody else wants to hear that, it's fine. I mean, it's something that you can pay to buy, have a key, they have to have a key where they can open the door rather than kick it. So whatever, the family pays to fix the door, or we pay to buy the key, and I don't care.
Well, and when I asked Scott about this, when I was going through the budget, $2,500 of that $3,700 was residential boxes, like on the houses. The $1,200 was on the fire trucks. And my feeling is, I don't mind the $2,500, but the $1,200 on the fire department boxes, I really feel like they can cover that expense. Because their taxes are much higher than ours, I mean, they can. For their firebox, from their trucks.
Basically,
Is
the
that right?
request was $2,500 of that $3,700 was a request for traditional Knox boxes that would only be in the hands of residents who the fire department would determine is needy of. If folks that might not could get to their door in an emergency, that kind of thing. It doesn't buy many.
It was reflective of about 12, I think.
Really less, probably less than that.
Yeah, my math said about 8.
They're $200 and some a piece, roughly, depending on exactly what you get. The rest of the money, the $1,200, to make up the $3,700 total, was a request for additional boxes to go on the fire trucks, the fire engines. The way this, here's the explanation. You have these keys to the Knox boxes. In order to control access to the keys when you have both paid and volunteer firemen, the thinking is you want those keys in a safe place on the truck where not just anyone can get to them. These are basically, think of a mini safe that goes on the truck that controls access to it. There's a keypad or something that allows, that tracks whoever gets into it and is only allows certain authorized folks to get into it. So that $1,200 was to buy 4 $300 a piece roughly to go on 4 trucks, I believe is.
Well, that's fine. I mean, I'm not for it. I just had this question sitting in the
Well, and that's why I was asking kind of what that meant. So I was fine with the residential portion of it for handicapped people who couldn't afford them. But for the fire trucks, I felt like that was something that the fire department would probably be willing to provide for their own trucks, you know, as opposed to us providing it.
When
The town.
we discussed this Knox Box program a long time ago, and the firemen really didn't seem very interested in it at all, and said they had some, and they hardly used them.
Yeah,
So
and it would seem to
I-
me if we came up and it was a real emergency, and you knew there was somebody behind that door that needed help, trying to take time
To find the
to get a key,
Yeah,
get the right key, I mean, we're
That's
going
why
in.
they.
That was basically what I heard them do, was it's quicker just,
And that number is so isolated, you have so few of them,
yeah.
how do you decide where you put them?
Yeah, but they already had some. They said they had them and they didn't use them. So I'd like to know if they want them, how many do they have now and how many are in use? We never got
I
that
asked that,
information.
exact number, but it was a very limited number,
Handful
somewhere around 5 or 6.
maybe
Are
four.
they being
Or
used?
are in place. I mean, yes, they've been given to
People who need
residents, and they are in place to be used if needed.
And so how do they get access the key from the truck if they don't?
Well, right now, the keys are, I'm not sure how they keep them exactly, but it's not in any kind
I
of
think they
secure
need to-
location.
That's the problem, you may have a fire truck from another place that comes to answer.
Maybe
Now,
so,
that would be
maybe,
the whole
or
problem.
maybe they're
I
on
didn't think about that.
the
That's a
assistant
point too.
chief's, all of them are on the assistant chief's.
That may be why it costs so much, because they would want one key that would fit all the Knox boxes on every truck. I don't know, I just don't think that's.
Is it worth, the question for you, is it worth, do you want to hear more detail about that
No.
specifically? Or, and if you don't, do you want me to take it out of the proposed budget?
Yes.
No, yes.
No?
No.
Everyone, take it out.
Is, okay,
Thank you.
let's add that to our list, moving right along.
We'll be happy to entertain it again down the road.
I have 2 questions about park and rec programs. So I see that we have the movies in the park still in place. Is that correct? Please tell me that.
Movies in the park. What page are you on?
I am on page 5 of 7 of the video.
It's line item
Oh, you have 2,500 for movies in the park?
Yes.
How many years didn't people have that?
Yeah. The last time we had movies in the park, it came out to $80-something a person, is what the movie cost. Because they had a meeting and like 6 people showed up.
Well, what's different is that from this time last year is that we have an events coordinator now. We've talked through her part-time schedule, trying to balance events between obviously the signature event, the Founder's Day, and balancing them out through the course of the year. That was a request that she had, that we do the movies in the park. I support that request. I know that it lost traction last year and May this year, but it's in the proposed budget. And one thing that you'll notice that I'll bring out with the music in the park events, this was the one line item you cut last year from the budget was you cut music in the park from 5,000 to 2,500. And so the question was, okay, we have one bigger event, or do we try to make 2 events out of that? And we're doing 2, trying to do 2 out of it. It gives me $1,250 roughly for advertising, for getting someone to come play, for sound. And what we discovered after doing the fall music in the park event, that one worked pretty well for that amount, but we also have $300 and some that comes out of that budget for basically royalties to be able to have those events. It's a fee for a service that we have to pay. And long story short is, I don't want to try to do any more music in the park events for $1,250. Just trying to plan the one for the June 28th event. Trying to do a beach music event. is going to be considerably more. And we're doing it because we're pulling money from some of the other events that were not, that didn't come to fruition. But if we're going to do music in the park events, we need about $2,500 an event to do it right, unless you want to keep it really, really small. And maybe you don't want to do two, but what we're proposing is to do one in the spring and one in the fall.
I'm not sure I heard the bridge. I thought we were talking about the movies in the park.
Well,
And now we're talking about
Movies in the park.
music in the park.
right. I thought we got past the movies in the park part.
No, we actually didn't.
Okay. So
I know you want to get away from that, but I'm still,
Okay.
I don't know if you want.
So, I guess my message on the movies in the park, if you remain adamantly opposed to that, tell me and we'll take it out. But my message to you is we would like to do it. We think any shortcomings in past events have been more about planning and marketing and advertising and less about just that events won't work. Those movies in the park won't work. I know some of you have very strong opinions about it, and if you want it out as a group, let me know and we'll take it
Well, I,
out.
for one, think that activities in a park like we had, like the one that we had, music in the park, was excellent. It was well attended. I had lots and lots of feedback from people that said we should do more of these kinds of events. I have been in communities where they have movies in the park and they have done the same kind of thing with a number of people that came out, but they've got to know it's going to be done on a regular basis. Not every weekend, not every 2 weekends, but it's something that the community can come out with. Bring their kids, they can bring hot dogs, they can bring refreshments, and it's a time where communities and neighborhoods can come together and sit and listen or watch. But I'd be in favor of those kind of activities to congeal the community more.
Well,
I think the problem that we have at our park, I think the people of Summerfield are different from a lot of other towns. I really think it is a unique community in that there was actually a lot of advertising for that movies in the park.
yes.
People are extremely busy today. I mean, I have 4 children, so I do understand kind of the heartbeat of Summerfield, since I'm in that largest population point of having children at home under 18. And we're so excessively busy today. I don't have time to do one more thing. I mean, I really don't. And if I'm going to watch a movie, I personally don't want to watch it in the comfort of my own home, minus mosquitoes, rain, or a multitude of other things that could happen. I know it does happen, like in Eden, I think you said they had the outdoor. I think that's great. I think we are in the community that's close enough that people here, if they really want to do that, they can go to Eden and do it. It's not so far away. But it was actually well advertised, and there was just so few people that came. And,
But was the time right? Was
yeah, well, you can only do it so much time because you have to be dark, and then the park isn't lit. So I think you bring into also a safety hazard, really.
Well, it's lit well up there at the amphitheater.
It wasn't during the Halloween. I'm going to just assure you. Don't go there.
Well, let me tell you, when I came in as manager less than 2 years ago, the obvious question for me was I went to our park and our amphitheater and I thought, wow, what a great venue for community events. We've had almost no events there. So my desire to do that is out of a desire to utilize what we've spent a lot of money on the building. The amphitheater doesn't get rented for very many uses, very rarely. Its purpose was to have music, plays, movies, those types of things. And we need to be using it in some productive way, is my opinion.
Well,
Maybe movies are not the...
I think daytime
what
events
you
are
like.
okay. I mean, I'm not against daytime events.
What
I just
events do you suggest that would be events that would bring the community together more?
Well, I think at any kind of daytime event,
Like
a
what?
Halloween event,
What would you
where you
suggest?
have little kids that get out there with they have a violin or a flute or whatever, and they play, and you have some kind of, I mean, that worked really well, actually, the Halloween event during the day. They use the rock gym, and it's light, and it's daytime. I think you have fewer safety issues and problems with people in the park at night. I just think, in general, the events at night are not a good thing. I think they can be problematic. I think we've seen in the past they were problematic. experience of events we've had there, and I think we had a lot of problems.
I think that we have a new person on board, this young lady who's going to plan the events. I think we should not overload her with stuff. The movies in the park, I was livid when I found out that broken down, it came to, I think it was $76 a person is what it cost the town to do that movie. So few people there. I don't mind the music in the park. I think people enjoy it. They can come out on a Sunday afternoon and listen to the music. And if you want to do 2 events, I think that's great. I think we should scratch the movies in the park.
Well, they did things with plays and different things like
Yeah,
that.
for
And
the
opened it up to
community organizations.
But people aren't renting that and doing anything there.
Yeah, also the dance company used to do things there.
We had some involvement, that was really before I came as manager, and I'm not sure, they just never requested any additional things, I'm not sure what happened.
What about the dance company? Remember they
Yeah,
were at Founder's Day? They kind of
dance.
regrouped. They regrouped, okay.
Now they're called Greensboro Performing Arts, I think, and, but they're still around. They moved locations and they did some other things, so they're trying to, they did perform at Founder's Day, and that was kind of their first thing after reorganizing, is my understanding. So they're interested in joining back up and doing some things in the park. They just have to take a step back for a minute.
That was always well done. No problems from
I
that.
mind having some money in there for some events, some outdoor events, if you want to put them in there for sure, or whatever to look at to see.
There's $1,000 in here for partnership events. Isn't that what we're talking about, if a community?
That seems like if somebody wants to put it out.
That's our summer cycle events.
Oh, that's the summer
Yeah,
Summer
that's what
cycle.
goes
cycle?
forward with the county.
That's because of $1,000.
So put another, take the movies in the park out and put another $1,000 in the partnership events, and we'll do summer cycle and maybe partner with
But it
a
says-
community group.
It says when we spent $376 last year. Is that how many this cycle?
47.
And this year we're like,
Water, sampling.
Yeah, it's not very much, so $1,000 is a lot.
Well, and in the past, we've done 2 events, and we've kind of stepped back from doing one. We can certainly fine-tune that one more.
So what we're discussing now is taking 2,500, that's movies in the park, reducing that to 1,000 and combining it with partnership events. Line item
Taking movies in the park,
601188.
reducing it to 0.
Yeah, taking that, well, that's in essence what I said, taking it to 0, moving 1,000 of that 2,500
To partnership.
into the partnership. Yeah.
so that means 2,000.
Discussion on that?
What my discussion would be is, if movies seem to be a stigma, then how about other events in the park, and have some kind of a reserve, so our events coordinator could think of other ideas, perhaps during the daylight hours when people wouldn't be hurt, that they could actually have some other kind of community activity.
I don't have any objection to that, but I think we should let her get her feet wet. She's brand new here and she hasn't really run anything. Give her a chance to feel her way around and do these events and become successful at it, and then go from there, expand it then.
Because we have the fishing derby, the Christmas tree lighting, the touch a truck, the partnership, and the museums of
Two
park.
music in the parks.
It is a lot for
And
people to plan.
Founder's
It's a lot of
Day.
time. And Founder's Day, which is, as you all know, huge time.
I think we should give the girl a chance to just get used to what she's doing here.
Do you have any amounts in mind, Mr. Adams, or how you want to allocate it?
I would like to not throw it completely out of the budget, but have $1,000 in there for other things that she may come up with. She may come up with some creative idea, but to limit her and to say that she's overloaded, I think that's a little bit presumptuous on our part.
That's basically what we're doing though, by adding 1,000 to partnership events.
So partnership events would,
Yeah, just
Give
give
her
her
leeway.
some more money, give her a little leeway.
So we can can have 2,000 partnership events, or we have 1,000 partnership events, and rename this line item, movies in the park, to events in the park, and put $1,000 there.
I wouldn't have a problem with the partnerships added to the partnership as long as it has some flexibility.
Well,
Does
that's
that
up to
provide for
the
flexibility?
manager.
What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of, work for her to do if we cut the movies in the park. There's plenty of work always to be done.
I guess our question is just how would you like to see it listed? Would you like 2,000 under partnership events and nothing under movies in the park, or 1,000 under partnership events and 1,000 under events in the park instead of movies in the park? Which would you prefer?
The second.
Okay, so is that a big deal if we rename that line item?
Movies in the park becomes events in the park.
Events in the park, and then, so it would be 1,000 for each category?
And what about the partnership events? If that's for the recycling, we don't need $1,000 because we only spent $200.
We could move that down to 500.
Yeah, we can.
Is there any other partnership event besides the summer cycle?
Not now. I'm not sure where it was paid in the past, but for instance, there have been programs that have been done at the community park with, like the Raptor program, where we had a Raptor Center come in and have things for kids.
I think the Fearsome Pirate Frank, the Children's Theater, that was a community that came out of the partnership.
Well, that could come out of events in the park, since we just put money in there.
Yeah, could that do that? Because the Rapper event, I mean, I can't remember how people went to that. That was around the same time as the Vermeil did that, And we were kind of duplicating what was already being done really well at Vermeil, I think.
Okay.
So we're doing 1,000 for events in the park.
Do you remember how successful the Raptor event was?
I didn't.
500 for
Yeah, I was just trying to remember
partnerships.
that.
500 for partnerships.
Are you suggesting 500 for the
Yes.
partnership?
Partnership, because that's the recycling.
The summer cycle. And then events in the park, you want to put
This is
1,000 or?
1,000. Right.
So we take away the 2,500 for movies in the park,
Yep.
add $1,000 for events in the park,
Right.
and take away $500 for partnership events. and come up with
And leave the 5,000 for music in the park, which would be 2 events.
Two nice events. And that'll give her time to do those well and have a success as opposed to doing, this is gonna problem. We have 10 things, nothing done well, and,
Nothing shows up.
whether,
And the $4,000 for the Christmas tree lighting. I want to see lights.
We're not reducing
I want to
that.
see them from my house. No.
Other questions?
You're on top this year.
So net, we are decreasing that section about $2,000.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question that is not in the budget. The group that wanted to use the park for the Down syndrome event,
Yes.
are they using the park? What happened to them?
I gave all of you a memo as soon as we worked that out. I left it in your box. I can give that to you again, but basically that's scheduled for October
October
27th. October sometime on a Saturday.
I thought it was a
And
19th.
I gave you a fair amount of detail, really their proposal and, or their letter that outlined all the details. My response back to them approving it after we had seen a more detailed proposal and they had satisfied our questions about parking and logistics.
Okay. And and under community services, line item 701-1201, what is the community project for $1,800? What is that?
Oh, Save for Nottingham County, that's a big,
Okay.
that's a very well done thing.
Okay. It just said community project. I didn't understand what that meant.
Any other questions?
Do we still have both the community services going on? I know there was one at the Methodist Church on Skelter Road and then one at Lake Grant Road, but I haven't seen in the Northwest Observer anything about the one on Skelter Road lately, if I remember correctly. So are they still meeting at both places?
Are you talking about the shelters?
No, the senior.
The senior,
Oh,
yes.
yes, they are, okay.
Any other budget-related questions?
I wanted to just ask, it seemed like where the intergovernment revenue on the first page, everything went up except the electric power franchise. What happened there?
That's just really hard to pin down. We get some letters from the North Carolina League of Municipalities saying we expect this is gonna go down, this is gonna go up. We just kind of look at some trends of how we're collecting, and at this point, we just collected 2 quarters worth. It's 131,561 just for this third quarter and fourth quarter, so we're quite a few. It just was a delay. But it just looked like it was trending down a little bit, which is kind of odd.
So it could be more, so.
It could be more,
Okay.
certainly.
Another item I'll be remiss without mentioning to me is we've talked about the last couple of years, there's been a lot of talk about cutting our tax rate. And what does that mean in reference to some of our sales revenues? And it's not been stated yet, so I'm going to say it now. The cost of the estimated cost, because it's a little tricky how it's calculated across several line items, but the associated cost with cutting taxes by 3/4 cent, in addition to the obvious reduction in the property tax collected, is roughly 25 or 26 thousand that we will lose in sales revenue. If you're looking at your line item budget, what we're talking about is under revenue on the first page, in that first column, we're looking at the local government sales tax, the half percent local sales tax, the additional 0.5% local sales tax, the local option sales tax. Those items, that's where that ultimately comes from. So it's not as simple as just cutting the tax rate with no penalty. That's really, in essence, our cost to cut the tax rate. And I think that's important for everybody to understand. We talked about it in the past, we talked about it in terms of, well, what if we went all the way to zero? What would we give up in sales tax revenues? And not exact numbers, remember back to last year. But if we had gone from 3.5 cents all the way down to no tax at all, such as was done 1 year in the past, that would have cost somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it was 107,000 roughly. And at the time, and I just wanted to point that out. That's our cost if we stay with, if we go with a 2.75 cent rate instead of 3.5.
So
Thank you.
what are you saying, that you want to go back to 3.5 cents?
No, I'm saying that I want everybody to understand when you cut the tax rate, it's not free in terms, but I don't think citizens always understand that.
But they're also, the citizens are also part of Gilbert County, so that money goes back to Gilbert County for use in their budget, correct? If they're not giving us that money, then it's still benefiting the people of Gilbert County. Maybe not specifically Summerfield, but we also get some benefit from it.
Would you get more Pleasant Garden vehicles,
Right.
depending on what their property tax levy would, it would not just stay with Gilbert County.
I thought I heard a rumor that the legislature was considering changing that distribution back to per capita.
They have talked about it.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And they are allowed every year around, to look at it every year.
So we need to write our state legislators,
It's only fair to
tell them to change it.
this has been a very different presentation than I planned, but thanks for bearing with me. And I think that basically it's worked pretty well. We jumped into the heart of the spreadsheets, answered a lot of questions, and I just want to make sure you're comfortable if we make these changes and come back with that proposed budget that ultimately is going to be very similar at the June 10th meeting. For the most part, you're comfortable, short of any second thoughts between now and then, anything. Is that?
Discussion on that?
I want to just ask one thing. In view of, on page 3 of 7, you had audio-visual equipment, nothing budgeted, but in view of all of this that's come up tonight, do we need to update and put a figure in there since we have changed some of the figures?
In light of our projector challenges?
Yes, perhaps you could take some money and put that in.
Well, that's a thought, and as is another thought that I would like to have. When we bought the screen, the whiteboard, interactive whiteboard for town hall for the conference room upstairs, that has been used probably 3 times as much as we anticipated. That thing is used every day, it seems like, and they make a identical version on stand, roughly with the stand and everything, probably around $7,500. We could have that here. The question is, how much do we want to invest in something portable that stays here? Because if you bought it here, we can't haul it back and forth in the truck, and we're not going to do that. If we buy it for here, it'll basically get used once a month, maybe twice. Board of Adjustment zone boards can use it if they need, but it won't be used a lot, and it'll stay locked away in this room. And I've considered that. The other challenge with that is not as effective here because we don't have internet here. So
You can buy from very good projectors, $1,000 or less.
Right.
They're quite portable.
You go to Costco, get them for $600.
So,
When are we planning on revenue, being in the Gordon building for meetings? Next year, 2 years from now, 5 years from now?
no, I'll be very clear about that. With this coming budget year, we don't have, and we talked about this in our budget workshops. The progress this year is stabilizing the property out there and getting that where we want it, getting the buildings down, and to be investigating what we want to do with exactly how we want to do those renovations for the Gordon building. But we have not budgeted money for architectural plans or anything direct yet. Anticipation is that for the following budget year after these projects are behind us. And
So it could be like 3 years, so
yes.
actually we need to do something that is just buying a projector.
I think since we have
$100 in the summer, so we
I think.
Well, if we could get the whiteboard in a place where we'd be able to use it for stuff other than just this one meeting or one other meeting with planning, it would be a different decision. But I think for the amount of time that we'll get to use it, I think probably just the $600.
Yeah, and we thought about, I thought about getting a portable identical whiteboard for downstairs on the stand for when we have meetings there. But it was a pretty heavy investment, just for when we're downstairs as opposed to when we have a smaller committee, we can go upstairs. So,
I have one in fact in my house that somebody bought a few years ago that I'd be happy to donate.
Yes.
And what is this that you're donating?
It's a projector.
Oh, the projector, okay.
Yes. It's a little larger than that one, but hey, if it works and it's free,
It's larger than that.
yes.
It was probably more than 3 or 4 years ago.
Maybe free.
But that thing right there looks like from the 80s.
Well, I'll give that up to you, my manager. If you want to keep it, great. If you don't want to keep it, then you can do what you will with it.
Okay, Ms. Whitaker, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other additional council discussion?
Can we discuss the closing of Friday? On the wooden building?
We, for on the budget meeting,
I don't know. That's part of the budget. I just want to know if you're going to do a walkthrough, if we have title insurance and a survey.
Title insurance is being ordered. The survey, I believe, has been completed. We're passing phone calls, missing phone calls with the surveyor. Scheduled to be ready last Friday. And yes, a walkthrough has been part of the process. I've talked to the attorney about that probably a month ago. So that's on everybody's radar as an agreement. That's one of the conditions before closing. We have to do a walkthrough. It's probably not going to happen until Thursday, but that'll be okay as long as it's before the closing.
any other council discussion? I'd like to just say before we go on to the budget-related public comments that I really appreciate all the work that you guys have put into this. I know it's no easy undertaking, and I think what you've come back with is really good. It's really good with just a few minor tweaks. I think you guys did an awesome job, short of technology not working with us. And even in consideration of that, to take us through all that with no overheads or anything was a great job.
I would also like to just thank you for the willingness that you brought it to everyone and the community with the various meetings that you've held, and I think that's been good.
I guess one good outcome from this evening is with the changes we've talked about, I was going to have to update the very long document to you anyway. I can do that now, still have it to you in plenty of time for review before the June 10th meeting. So.
Yeah, I have to say thank you for starting the budget process earlier and giving us time to have more input and giving the public time for input. I appreciate it. And obviously you listened. So thank you.
Well, thank you for going over some of the things that we didn't have to bring up.
That's what I'm here for.
Thank you. Okay, now for our budget-related public comments. I would just encourage everyone, these are specific to the budget. So if you have something specific to the budget, we'd like to ask you to just come up. We don't have a list tonight, so if you would, as always, when you come up, please identify yourself, give us your address, and then you have 5 minutes to share your thoughts or feelings on the public comments on the budget. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for speaking with me yesterday. My name is Carol Carter. Address is 5505 Hempstead Drive, Greensboro, 27410. Got the technology that isn't just tonight, if you recall. I think I tried every time I tried it when we were working on this here. You may be wondering why I'm here. I'm former staff. When I worked here, like I told you, people here are very special. They were then, they still are. And as a planner, I gave my cell phone number to almost every citizen that walked in the door because there were some who are just, not everybody is a planner. And planning is so difficult to understand as is budget. And I've gotten calls and calls and calls and calls over the last year or so, and I've tried my best to distance myself. But I hope you don't mind. I decided I would come tonight and go over just a couple of things that would be comments I've heard on the budget that they asked me to review. I'm not being paid on disability, and I think these are good things to bring up for any budget. That's why I'm here tonight, and I'll try to keep it 5 minutes. On the revenue, it's got a good job of trying to translate that for all of us to listen to. Part of my question was going to be about the document itself. You know, I know that the state requires a document that goes with this list, and it talks, that document outlines your priorities for spending for this year, so I think you answered that. On your revenue, I just want to make sure you have checked on legislation for ABC, tax, what they're going to be giving to local governments, et cetera, and see if any of that is going to be changing, as well as franchise agreements. I don't know if Summerfield has its own franchise agreement for cable or not, and when those are up for renewal. Also, had 0 for grants. One of my recommendations is going to be in regards to the trail. That might be one thing I get those calls on. That's a good project, and I started trying to figure out, I've already Googled up grants to build this trail. And I would caution you about getting easements this early in the process, because even though a lot of it is in the Greensboro wetlands, they're going to build the footbridges, you still don't know until they go in and actually do those borings, even in the wetlands, as to where that footbridge can go. So that could impact the location across the street when you get to Bunch Road. And when you go out and buy easements, 10 feet is going to make a big difference for you later on as cost goes, if it's just 10 feet. So I would caution you to go out and get easements based on drawings right now and wait. Go ahead and bid out at least a preliminary engineering contract to at least get your borings and everything, and make sure the line is set your right of way. Then easements, I think too, when you do the easements, be clear about what they're talking. But I would highly recommend that this year you go ahead and invest in some preliminary engineering study and take the time to find grants to build this trail. This trail is not only considered a transportation trail, it's a recreation trail. And I've already found 4 grants that are out there that will help you with planning and construction. That's the biggest thing, is the construction of those. So I highly recommend that the revenue side begin to look at that. If you want any of the information I found, I'm happy to help you. Also, county rates. Want to make sure planning is an inexpensive venture, but the county collects the fees for building. Once the Summerfield planner does subdivision, zoning, and then when people are ready to build, they write their development certificate, and we get a $25 fee or a $50 fee. Then everything goes to the county from that point on. They go get all of their permits, their building permits, everything from the county. It has a fee structure whereby they pay you back, hopefully, part of their fee. They raise their fees just a little bit so that Summerfield gets some revenue in from those. But all of that is handled by the county, and I just want to make sure you check, make sure that the county hasn't raised its rates, and review your rates to see if the gap is missing. Or if there will be something you might end up having to pay. So as far as revenue goes, Ms. Flowers, I think that if the permit fee that is inclusive that the county charges for building permits here has been the same for a very long time. And I think you've got some leverage at this point to look at that fee table and fee structure and raise those a bit. You're not going to get all your money back.
Ms. Carter, apologize for interrupting you. Your time is up.
No, I know I was going to ask you to please, I just want to make sure that you understand too, on the historic property, now that you purchased it, it's subject to 4F now. So SHPO will have to be involved, and you'll have to do big contracts, include MDE, WDE, and all sorts of things for whatever you do on the property.
Thank you.
Gail Dunn on 5805, City here, 5805 Summerfield Drive. Thank you for foregoing your pay raises. And I think if you looked at the list, they really were comparable. And I just like to come to one meeting where you only talk about, I want to be Summerfield, not I want to be somebody else, I want to be like other people. I just want to be Summerfield, because it's great quality of the town. Scott, to make a long story short, you've got to learn to let go. It's getting worse. The town council voted to have no movies in the park. They were a dismal failure. It didn't work out well, and a lot of times whether they could cancel their changes. Every event generates phone calls and traffic into the town hall. So to have an event, you still have staff that are spending time on it. But council had said they didn't want movies in the park. It hadn't worked. And we went on for 12 minutes. You still want your movies in the park. You said that you've hired a very high-paid party czar, so we're looking for things for her to do. That's not the reason. Just let go of movies in the park. And when the Knox box came, finance talked about it, council talked about it, someone suggested deleting it. It didn't take another 12 minutes. It had been decided. So some of these things let go of. If you're cutting, if you're lowering line items, don't worry about it. There's so much money, there's $8 million in the bank. You can always do a budget amendment. As I said, for over 10 years, you only spend 55% of what you levy. This year, even with buying the Gordon property, you're still only spending 50% of the tax levy. So I have three things I would like to mention concerning employees. And it was a good suggestion to break out the employees for each line item so people know whether it's part-time or full-time. Excel spreadsheet to take one line item and make it two is not that much work. But three areas of concern about employees. And management and procedures and policies are very important. Time is also money. The use of town time is very important. On April 3rd, I had requested just a list for performance evaluations for the last 2 years, the date of employment, when an evaluation was made, and the last day of employment or when they left. But just to have some type of a simple sheet so that you know that people actually did receive their employee performance reports. And I think that the council may even want to see those. I also, that was submitted April 3rd. It's pretty simple stuff. I resubmitted it tonight. I also had given you a sheet that listed the employees and the breakdown of pay and benefits. You have, it's just the pay and benefits for each employee. It was discussed. I think the council said, yes, we want that updated. We talked about it in an addendum to the budget, whatever it is. It's not here tonight. And I think that that's very important for you to be looking at. The biggest part of this, the biggest fixed expenses are your pay and benefits. So why not look at them? And the third thing about somebody asked me recently, they said, what was the pay and benefits for the town employees 10 years ago? It was $80,000. And this year, we haven't grown that much, but this year, it's going to be it'll be $445,000. So the pay and benefits have grown substantially. You talked about having a lower tax rate, like losing $26,000 a year was really serious. Well, you talked about, first thing Alicia brought up was increasing the revenue, and it's so simple and it hasn't been done, and I think it's irresponsible that it hasn't been done. If you'd gotten 3% treasuries in January for the $3 million, again, that's $90,000 a year. Instead, we're getting a quarter or a third of a percent. So we're losing $81,000 a year on $3 million just by leaving 1/3%. So you've already lost $40,000 for the first half of this year. And if you wait for the next finance meeting, the last finance meeting, there's some things that are not functional. And I'm not sure if that's going to go through or not. Let's see, time management is very important. The banners, you're talking about the branding. I noticed that there's new banners on Summerfield Road. I don't know if you're planning to carry the theme, but the banners, all they do is call your attention to the power lines. I don't know, is this a butterfly, is this feathers? I have no idea what this is, what they are, and they're not very legible. So I don't know if you're planning to expand that thing or not.
Ms. Dunham, that's all your time.
Just one last thing. I gave all of you just a cover sheet. This is very important too, as far as, you know, you're not just elected to spend the money, but you should be doing cost-benefit analysis on things. And have a spreadsheet like this, from everything that's been spent to renovate town hall. And I
Okay,
wish there was
thank
more
you.
time. And as a response, filing, I'm filing, it's not a problem with public record requests, and I'm filing it because questions aren't being answered. Yeah. Thanks.
Dale, 3461 Sweat Drive. Kids voting you have in here, I was looking at it when you were all talking. We had our meeting on the board of elections, and it made me think of something. Kids voting basically isn't going to happen anymore, because that organization is kind of disbanding, so to speak. I would say follow up with that to make sure, because in our meeting, they have talked about what can we do as a board of elections to continue it without putting money in it. We don't have any money, the commissioners have all the money. So we were trying to think, well, let's encourage poll workers and so on and so forth to just use the forms and keep the forms and keep using what they have. But you might want to check into that. You may have to take that off, because that organization, from my last meeting, was, I believe, the impression I got is that it's not going to happen. So I just want to mention that. The health insurance, I don't know if finance committee, but the health insurance that the town provides, the taxpayers provide for the town employees, you know, a lot of organizations are going where, you know, to feel some of that pain the taxpayers got to pay out, and some of these employees are, could possibly donate or contribute to some of their health insurance. Just throwing it out there, you know, it's kind of best thing to know. But anyway, my point in this is, with the cost of premium going up so high because of the current success of Obamacare, it has an impact on a lot of people. So I just want to mention that. So it's something to think about just in your budget here. Currently, the sound system, you may want to put some money into a new sound system because it's really pitiful. She's got to carry this thing around everywhere, drag it across. All these wires are health hazard or safety hazard. Somebody's going to trip you, electrocute or something. But you may want to look into that. I think that's a real important item. Of course, the volume is okay tonight, but usually it's not like this. Sound system, kids voting, that. What are your requirements for code enforcement? And I ask this in a kind of sarcastic way, because I would probably like to start a business in code enforcement, because, you know, if we're going to pay that kind of money out, I'm interested in that now. Okay, I'll sort it out. In my last sarcastic comment tonight, I know it's serious about the budget. I mean, you all talk a lot about it. But you know how Alaska works. You know, they have a budget, and at the end of the year, they give their residents X amount of a percentage of whatever money they make in revenues. They give every citizen in Alaska X amount of dollars. I think maybe we should go to a 60%, keep our budget, you know, keep up with what municipal league, you know what I'm talking about. You got to have a certain balance. If we hit 60%, which we said we're well over 100%, 500%, we should at least maybe go 100%, and then whatever's left over, give it to all the citizens in Summerfield and just keep, you know, they'll get it, but not to encourage more people to come here as a cutoff. I think that's a good idea. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
They get oil revenues is where they get that money from.
Well, we
Extract
got a
oil
lot.
in Summerfield, let me know.
Fracking is coming.
There's no oil down there. The employees, is their district's covered 100%?
Yes, and we didn't get into the detail of that tonight, but
And for family coverage?
Employee only is covered, only full-time. They're just completely covered. If the full-time person wants a family member covered, Summerfield contributes $300 for that coverage. A part-time employee would only have half of their coverage paid, and if they want to carry their family or a member, it's $150. So we actually have one full-time employee and two part-time employees now that are not covered under the health care at all through Summerfield, and they're given a bonus every month $300 $300 for full-time.
Technically, it's an allowance.
Well, it's a salary, it's taxable, $300
To
for
buy
not.
healthcare
Yeah.
somewhere else.
So it's the same.
Okay.
What's the
All right, that's a good question. Thank you, Mr. Brindle. Mr. Crawford?
One Crawford, 1106 NC Highway 150 West. Several things, a couple small things, and a main thing I'll get to. Called Bruce Oakley over at County Oak Ridge, asked them how much they were paying to the Guilford County for their planning services. So the last 5 years, $14,000 a year. They know it's going to go up, it's going to change. But that's what they've been paying for their planning services for the last approximately, he used the word approximately, 5 years.
I believe they're also hiring a planner.
It's in the budget, but it's not assured. That's going to be a council decision. When the town of Summerfield fails to receive revenue sharing of the sales tax distribution, that's not money the town earned. That's not a cost. That's failure to share revenue. The cost here is $361,000. That's money the citizens earn. That is the cost. Lost revenue is not a cost that the town didn't earn. All right, the main thing I want to talk about, what is, when I was running for office, when I come up here and talk to you guys, my mind is always in the civil society. Summerfield is a collection of people, 10,000 people, all doing their own thing, things that are important to them. I think Summerfield citizens get along great. That snowstorm we had back in, whatever it was, February, there's people helping people all over the place. Summerfield's a great place to live. We got amenities out the wazoo. We got Lake Higgins. We got trails from Burn Hill, trails around Lake Brant, trails around Lake Townsend. We got Burn Hill Park, Lake Higgins Park, Guilford Battleground Park, the JC Park, Lake Townsend, Bryan Park, Hall River Park. We are absolutely. What's the big one up here?
Field a lot of carrot
Blues Creek. We are surrounded by all kinds of things we got opportunities to do. What is wrong with Summerfield? That's a question for you. Is our civil society broken? Is there a problem here that you guys need to be looking at to fix? Were you elected to entertain us? Were you elected to improve us? Were you elected to lord over and take care of us? To make us better? I heard a lot of that discussion going on tonight, how you're going to bring us together, make us get along. In times past, I know in the ball fields, the SRA president used to maintain those himself using his own equipment. I know that those lights down there on Summerfield, the ball field, they passed the hat over back when the SRA was still mostly parent run and not so much what it is today. They passed the hats. That's what they put those lights on those ball fields. That was people taking care of their own problems. They weren't looking to government, they were taking care of their problems. Founders Day started in Summerfield, was 100% volunteer. The town's totally taken it over, and it's become very costly, very costly. Back when we applied for phase 2 of the grants for this park here, we put in that grant application. The park is heavily used, we need the grant. And then just a couple of years later, the Parks and Rec, that guy got up here and said, I was at the meeting, and the Parks and Rec department's committee said, we don't have enough people in our park. We need to have events to make it look like the park's being used. Wait a minute, we applied for a grant to get money based on how much is already used. Now because it's not being used, we've got to start holding events at more cost. Summerfield's not broken. Summerfield's a great place to live. We get along great. And I think we get along a lot better if everybody started thinking that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Anyone else?
I'll just like a sentence if I can, since I had to explain what I was here, just to ask about 2 other things.
Mr. Whitaker, did you want to respond to any of that? There's one thing in there I thought you, it's a question I thought you might want to answer. I can't remember what it was.
May I ask just 2 questions? The ordinance, talking about that one being the ordinance. I think you probably want to add some more funding in there. I would recommend this to the government foundation building.
Thank you.
One thing I did want to respond to is in someone's comment. It seems to be an overriding theme that we continue to grow government. In the last 2 years, I mean, the missing component of that is what's growing is our population. In the last 14 years, it's over doubled. And
I know all of
and
you.
what, well, I'm sorry, well, it's increased 50%, but, in the last 2 years, we've added one part-time, basically 18-hour-a-week, 19-hour-a-week, position. And that's still inadequate for what's needed to, that was specifically for our parks, that was a park attendance position. And while that's been a great Band-Aid, it's still inadequate for what we need when, at least from the manager's perspective, anything that we do to increase government is not born of a desire to increase government. It's born of a desire to operate what we have and what the comp plan seems to call for better in terms of operation. I want to operate the athletic park better than we've been able to. And I just want to be real clear that there's no hidden agendas to grow government.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker.
May I respond, please?
Nope.
It'll be very
Y'all get together afterwards. With no other public comments, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I just can't go home without asking two more questions. First of all, Ms. Carter talked about grants, and this was in the back of my mind, and it's not a question, well, maybe it is. Can we get grants or apply for grants to restore the Gordon building since it's a historic building? You don't have to answer me, but that's just something to think about. And I think we need to break out staff time for Founder's Day, because the Founder's Day figure in the budget is not realistic, because the staff spends so much time. And you guys just work like dogs. I'm not saying you shouldn't, and I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong, but I would like to know how much staff time is costing us for Founder's Day.
Two quick responses. In reference to grants, not related to the building, but grants in general, what was brought up, we could pursue grants for trail development. I've actually got a note in my file related to the trails, but I was not going to budget for it without any, because we're not far enough along now for that to be realized in this budget year. Jumping to the next question, which was just completely with staff time. That is a monster request to break down Founder's time. I couldn't tell you how many, I couldn't come close to telling you how many hours has been invested in Founder's Day, just for my part. And I realize the desire to know the answer to that question, but just trying to answer that question seems like a huge burden and poor use of time. And that's not being disrespectful of what you're requesting. It's just, wow, there's so many components to that. It cannot be compartmentalized that easily.
So the Founder's Day figure in the budget is an unrealistic figure, because we are not considering how much staff time goes into this.
Oh, it's realistic in terms of what's spent. It's completely unrealistic in terms of staff time, absolutely. I mean, it's.
The only question is, are we going to continue it or not? Do we want to expand it more or not? This Founder's Day we had Friday night and Saturday, which was more time than I recall us doing before.
I think you're right.
The council didn't ask for it to be expanded. It was expanded by the
Well, and the budget for at least the last 3 years, when I came in the last 2 years, has not increased.
We used to do a parade and something after the parade. Now we have Friday night, we have rides, we have all kinds of things, and that's fine if that's what the citizens want. But, you know, that is a good question to say. What do we really want from Founder's Day? Attendance was way down, but it was spread out. I went by the parking lots because I thought, there's nobody here. Those parking lots were packed. They were there. You
It's
just
'cause of
couldn't
venue,
see them
you
because
said
it
it
was
was
all
harder.
spread out.
So, and I think that gets back to what is more important. It's not how much are we spending right now, what do we want to do?
Right.
And how much do we want to invest in? How serious are we about Founder's Day? Because it's a huge distraction from a lot of work that you hold me accountable to do, and I hold staff accountable for.
Yeah.
But I'm not complaining about it, it's just, it needs, I think, the question before next year is more clarity on what the expectations are about it and how much you want to budget toward it, because it's just got to be a given that we spend an enormous amount of staff time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to simplify it personally, because when I came, I noticed you, I didn't see Katrina there, but I know Julie was there, and Jeff, and they all looked like y'all, they had been through a war. And I just felt really bad, because I don't expect that. I mean, I really don't, and I just felt really bad that you all felt that much pressure to do that, because it was certainly not my expectation for that kind of workload on the staff that does such a great job, and it was very well done. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was very well organized. I think you made a good point, because I thought the same thing. I thought it was very down. I think because it was so spread out that you didn't notice the people as much because it was so well organized.
Well, I was there at 6:30 on Saturday night, and most of the people were gone, and I think going home, especially people with small children. So I don't think it really needed to go on till 8 o'clock. But I think you brought up a very good point, Dina, and I think it's something that we need to discuss and give the feedback to the Founder's Day Committee, because it's just gotten, I think, out of hand. And it's budget time, and $1.5 million budget is a lot more important than Founder's Day as far as I'm concerned.
I can answer the question.
That's how we're spending the
To make a long story,
taxpayers'
short, you've got pay and benefits, $445,000 a year. 20% of that is $90,000. It could easily be 20% of the town time, because all the employees are involved for a long period of time. So, how can you do it more effectively?
Why was Founder's Day taken on by the town staff from the volunteers that used to do it?
When I came in 2 years ago, it had been, more of it had migrated towards internally for town staff. Because, part of it was because of how volunteers were, I think, concerns about how things were being spent and handled. And there was a desire, and safety, and there was desire for more liability, there was desire for more internal control, so more policies were put in place that sounded good and addressed some of those issues, but it effectively took a huge volunteer effort out of it and placed that on staff. And that's been my assessment of it. Valerie's probably could speak to that better than I can.
Once the policies were put in place to ensure that the money and the purchasing was done correctly, that put a big burden on volunteers. We lost a lot of volunteers because of the standard they were held to. And it was thought that since it is public money, we do need to keep very strict control over that. And there shouldn't be any deviation from the policy by anybody when public money is being used to avoid that. It was brought in. Dana Luther largely was behind that effort, bringing that more in-house. And then we went from more volunteers to these memorandums of agreement with different organizations, which worked fairly well, but it was not optimal.
So just explain this to me, because we hear a lot of things, but I prefer facts. some of these organizations that were called volunteers were actually being paid for some of their services?
In the past,
Yes.
there was two organizations, they weren't necessarily being paid.
They got percentage of gross.
They got some kind of, they got something out of it. I wasn't really involved with it at that point in time, but there was some kind of, at that time, the town was selling the tickets and the wristbands and such like that. Maybe those profits, or not necessarily profit, was shared with some other organization, like maybe PTA or something of that nature.
And the Summerfield Youth Council.
So those were the only two organizations
Maybe
that I'm
we just
aware of.
need to rethink the whole thing.
Well, you have to call
It's an
volunteers.
unbelievable-
You
it's
have
an
to call, we
unbelievable
don't have
burden
volunteers anymore.
for our staff.
I think it's
I mean, it's
too unreasonable.
It was
From being on the committee, if you don't mind me just take
It was definitely unreasonable.
30 seconds. If the council gave direction and what you really wanted, you want it Friday, Saturday, or you just want it Saturday, whatever, and what you want, give it to the manager and as a committee, it will clarify things, and I think it will be very helpful. And that way, when it comes down to how big is it supposed to be, and people, well, what happened this Founder's Day, what happened to this, why isn't it like it used to be? Somebody can say, well, we don't have the volunteers to do this anymore. And that's what it comes down to. I mean, and if you actually count on your hand, how many volunteers there actually were out there? I mean, just the number, I don't want names, but if you say a number of how many actual unpaid volunteers, don't say any names, how many can you shoot up, Scott? How many? Don't say names, just the number.
Well, you have to call the volunteers,
Volunteers,
yeah.
How many
Still
outside of the
have to
committee?
call.
Huh? Outside of the Founder's Day
Well,
committee?
count the Founder's Day committee in there, because a lot of them were involved in it, but just a number of how many were not paid.
Outside of the committee, there were 3 volunteers
Yes, there's
Okay.
3.
that I brought with me.
No names, just how many, 3?
3.
Okay.
Yeah. It was the event was unbelievable considering how many people put that event together.
And I think we need to look at what we want. I think we might either need to get feedback from the committee or suggestions. I think we just need to look at that.
I agree. I think you're right on the money, Bettina.
Because it was an after action meeting.
And with all due respect, it's very difficult for the citizens to get in touch with your staff when they're working on Founder's Day. Maybe it's a higher special events, concert here.
Yeah,
They work so hard on
With
that.
that in mind, though, I would like to put that in the Concord, make a motion to adjourn.
Have a motion by Mr. Barnes, second by Mr. Adams. All in favor, please raise your hand. And it is unanimous. Thank y'all for coming.
I don't want to take nothing away from you.